In this Pastor's Corner, I want to address the issue of the tongue, gossip. It is one of the most insidious things the church has had to deal with down through the ages. As a pastor, probably one of the biggest heartbreaks, hardest things to navigate as you lead a church is you can't control what people say, you can't control the tongues, and the damage that it does. James chapter 3 tells us this: the tongue can no man tame, it is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, and therewith curse we men. These things ought not to be. The gossip is insidious, and I've struggled with it because I've been on the receiving end as a pastor. Again, it just, it sets on fire the course of nature. It sets on fire of hell. James says the tongue is so powerful. Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 7 tells us this: a fool's mouth is his destruction. A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. Think of that. One member, James elaborates, it's just one little member of our body that destroys us. And the tongue splits churches, destroys marriages, just it's so insidious. And I came across an article in a newsletter recently that really was a blessing to me. And I want to read to you portions of it and just spend just a couple minutes here, quick as I can be, talking about gossip and challenging us. The psalmist says, set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth. Literally a sentry right before our mouth. And we all need that. Anyone that doesn't think that they could possibly be a gossip or be guilty of it may be the biggest gossip themselves. So let me read this. This article was called How Not to Gossip. And it starts out with this story. The writer says it all started with a comment from a friend. And by the way, this talks about a lady in a church, and her last name is the name of a lady in our church, so I'm going to change the name just so there's no confusion there. So here's the friend talks to this writer, this man, and he says, the pastor seems a bit too friendly with Mrs. Finkelmeister, doesn't he? Did you see the way he looks at her? Not exactly, I responded. Well, it does not look healthy to me, he said. We parted ways. I began to watch. I did not see much, but the pastor was smiling a lot when they talked. Maybe there was something to this. This is where my evil began. Proverbs 17:4 says, a wicked doer giveth heed to false lips, and a liar giveth ear to a naughty tongue. And the word naughty has the idea of literally being destructive. So a wicked doer gives heed to false lips. When we listen to gossip, even something as offhanded as that little comment, the evil begins, he says. I had listened. Now my evil heart was troubled. I wondered to myself, how could our pastor do this? The next section is gossip is a tasty trifle. We sat down to dinner later that day. The children gathered around the table, and I asked my wife, have you seen the way the pastor speaks to Mrs. Finkelmeister? No, she replied. Well, he seems just a little too friendly with her. My wife's face was troubled. The children paused. They too were disturbed. Nothing else was said, but the damage was done. My oldest child swallowed my evil. The tasty trifle went deep into his soul. The following Sunday, the pastor preached an excellent sermon about the importance of children honoring and obeying parents. I hoped my son had listened. We had been having some problems with him lately, but my tale had worked upon him like the fruit eaten by our first parents. When he looked at the pastor that day, everything had changed. In his eyes, the pastor was treacherous. He could not be trusted. The word had spread. And this is now the word about this gossip had spread throughout the church. I was glad to hear someone had confronted the pastor about his improprieties with Miss Finkelmeister. The next Sunday after worship, the pastor came to me with a stern countenance. I'd like to speak to you a moment about something your child told me. I stepped into his office and took a seat across his desk. The pastor got straight to the point. Your son told the Johnson's daughter that I was involved with Miss Finkelmeister. I asked him where he heard such slander, and he said, it was you. The dad says, I felt sick. I wanted to take back those words, but it was too late. And it always is. Once you and I open our mouth and we sow seeds of discord, the damage is done. The match has been lit. This writer says, if only I had done something different that Sunday afternoon. It might have been better to turn on the radio while we ate dinner. We could have listened to some gangster rap. Maybe we could have turned on the TV and watched a steamy soap opera. I could have read the latest news from the Inquirer to the family. Feeding my family this trash may have been better than feeding them that tasty trifle about the pastor and Miss Finkelmeister. Maybe I should have shoved a roll in my mouth and said nothing. Amen. But isn't that's why we need to ask God to put a guard, a sentry in front of our mouth. Keep the words of my mouth before they come out. I have found one of the biggest issues on determining gossip is, do you even know what gossip is? I find that it's so easy. If you don't know what gossip is, then you're just going to keep on gossiping or saying things that you may even be questionable, but unless you've got your mind wrapped around what gossip is, you're going to keep doing it. I tell people that my definition of gossip used to be anytime someone talks bad about me. Clearly, and you would probably agree, when somebody badmouths you and it gets back to you, any question whether or not that's gossip? The words of a talebearer are as wounds when it gets back to you. You know it's gossip. But why don't we hold that same standard about us when we give bad reports about other people? If we say it's gossip to talk bad about me, then why is it okay for us to talk bad about others? See, you and I need to be very careful about sharing bad reports. And if you don't have a proper definition of gossip, then you're probably going to be going around gossiping and not even realizing it. So here's the best way to understand gossip. Now, there is a bad report, but not all bad reports are gossip. There are times when you and I have to share bad news, a bad report about someone, but we need to ask ourselves, who am I sharing this to? Is it my place to share it? Is it the right time to share it? And is my motive correct in doing it? You see, if you and I are haphazard about just passing bad reports or questioning someone's integrity when we have no place to do that, and we're not even talking to maybe an authority in that person's life, or especially if we haven't gone to that person directly, then we are probably sowing seeds of discord. So let's do what the psalmist did, and let's ask God to keep a guard over our tongue.